Hello and welcome to this hardcore Nuzlocke. This is the first and probably only time I'll ever post a video like this, and I don't really expect anyone to watch, but since I enjoy watching these types of videos on YouTube, I thought I'd try my hand in making one too. It's been a bit of a labor of love for me, but I do have a full-time job and very limited videography skills, as you're about to see, so I know this video won't be quite as good as those pros that do it on a weekly or monthly basis, but you know what, I'm going to try anyway. It's also going to become clear as the run continues why I normally don't play using hardcore Nuzlocke rules, and you'll see that once we get into it. If you're new to hardcore Pokemon Nuzlocke, there are several rules to be aware of, and I'll try to list them below, but basically I can only catch the first encounter per route. I'm limiting the levels of my Pokemon to the next gym leader's ace, boxing any Pokemon that faint permanently, not using potions or other healing items during battle, and I'm playing on set mode. As an added twist, because this is my first time playing Pokemon Y, I'm an avid Pokemon X player. Gen 6 is actually one of my favorites pretty much in the whole franchise. But because I've never played Pokemon Y before, I'm going to only use encounters and play with Pokemon that I've also never used before. So I'm excited to see what these new Pokemon can bring to the table, and we'll see how that impacts the run overall. As for a starter, despite the fact that Generation 6 is one of my favorites, I've actually never used the Chespin line. And there's two reasons for this, I think. One, it starts out cute and gets progressively uglier. And two, its final evolution is actually quad weak to flying, which is terrible. However, this is what we have to work with, so I choose Chespin as my starter. I decide that I'm going to go with the name Chlorophyll for him, and I take a look at his nature, and it's brave. So with that, let's get our adventure started. So after we get this meeting with our rivals done, we can finally head out on our journey. I don't think we'll be concerned with the number of encounters here. I think we're going to get a lot of them. I think the big problem will be is on certain routes we're going to be cut off from encounters altogether, and we're going to be limited in certain spots based on what is actually available, because I'm going with things I've never used before. So like for example, we're about to start out here on Route 2, and the first Pokemon that I find is a Pidgey, which isn't going to work. I've already used Pidgey. And in fact, our encounters on this route are so limited, there's really only one Pokemon that I can catch, and that is this beautiful Scatterbug. Now, I've never used this Pokemon before, but I do know it will evolve fully into Vivillon before the first gym's level cap, so I'm excited to bring it along and see what it'll be able to do on the rest of our journey. Next up is the Sandalwood Forest, and kind of like on the first route, there's a lot of encounters that we just can't use. Our first one ends up being a Scatterbug, which we've already just caught, and the second one ends up being a Fletchling, which I've already played with. So again, I can kind of see where some of the issues in this run might be. However, fortunately for us, on the third encounter, we get a Pansear. Now, normally I would just throw this in the garbage. Its head literally looks like a giant poop. But our first gym is a bug gym, so I take it along because I think it might be useful. I'm also not sure why I don't have any footage of me nicknaming any of these Pokemon, but it is what it is. Outside the Sandalwood Forest, we get our next encounter. I'm hoping for an Azurill because if I evolve it, it can learn Rollout. My god, it's literal garbage. Oh, okay. Well, normally I wouldn't even entertain this, but since it's a Nuzlocke, we'll catch it anyway, but I don't plan on using this anytime soon. We get to Sandalwood City, but before I do anything, I decide to go to Route 22 and get one more encounter just to have as many Pokemon as I can, and I find the Psyduck, so I decide to bring him along on the team as well. I decide to name him Keratin because it's found in things like feathers, and I think that's kind of funny. After I deal with Psyduck, I decide to take in some of the sights. Look how beautiful this game is. And then before you know it, Polyamide, the Scatterbug, evolves into its middle stage, which I believe is called a Spupa. It doesn't really matter because within literally 2 minutes, it evolves into its final evolution, which is a Vivillon, right in time for the first gym. Speaking of, let's get into it. Our first gym leader is Viola, who's the bug-type gym leader, and I'm going to start with Polyamide. Her Surskit ultimately can't do very much, so even though my first Stun Spore misses, it's not the end of the world. Fortunately, I've got a pretty decent move pool. I don't have any flying type coverage, but as you're going to see, Struggle Bug is going to do more than half on her Surskit with one single attack. So before long, her Surskit's going to go down. Now, her Pavilion comes out next, and although it's prettier, it doesn't have as good of a move set as I do. However, the problem is, even though I have Struggle Bug, she has Infestation, which traps me in battle and does chip damage every single round. So when you see me using Struggle Bug, it's not going to do nearly as much as her Infestation is, just because she can chip me down. After a little bit of back and forth, you can see the infestation starting to take its toll, versus Struggle Bug, which is basically doing nothing. Even after being paralyzed and string shot, she's starting to chip me down. Even with Protect kind of slowing things down, I'm getting hurt big time here. Fortunately for me, even though I'm stuck by infestation, I'm able to get freed with 2 HP left. I'm able to save polyamide here. I switch out for carbon, and again, even though infestation here is not going to do much damage, it's going to trap me and do chip damage every turn. I hit it with a fire type attack, but it doesn't take it out, just to red health. But after that, she potions, which is a good sign for me. I go for another incinerate, bringing her down to red health, and I'm left with 14 myself. But the next one gets it, and the Pavilion faints, and with that, we have our first Kalos badge. On Route 4, the only two encounters that I have are a male Ralts and a Ledyba, and yeah, we get the Ledyba because it's way, way, way more common. And I immediately pretty much box him, never to be seen again, because I already have a bug type, and that's more than I need. In the gates to Lumio City, I get the TM for return, which I thought I would use, but ultimately I don't think I did very often. And before you know it, I'm in the professor's lab, so he can assess my Pokedex. Now, one thing that's kind of cool about these games is that you get to battle the Pokemon Professor, and he uses the Kalos starters. And one thing about me as a player of Pokemon is that I don't like to use handout Pokemon, and I don't like to use legendaries because I feel like it's kind of cheating. But in the spirit of this game, having never done anything before, I decided that I would take one of these three Pokemon because there's one that I'm pretty sure I've never played with, even way, way, way back in the day. But as the game continues, you will notice that I don't take any of the other handouts. I leave the Lucario later on in the game. I think you can get a Lapras at some point or something like that. But ultimately, I don't take any of these with me because I think it just ruins the spirit of the game. I think it makes it a little too easy. However, there is a Kalos starter, like I said, that I'm pretty sure I've never used, and that is Charmander, which is convenient because it balances out our grass type starter that we already have. Historically, I've always played with the water starter first, because I'm a water starter kind of guy, which is why we're not playing with Froakie. And I definitely know that I've played with Venusaur, but I don't remember ever playing with Charmander. So we're going to take it when the opportunity affords us. As you can see here, I've swept kind of the floor with the Professor, and we're about to beat his last Pokemon, Squirtle. He's going to make it a little more annoying on us because he's got Harden. You can see that Vine Whip does still over half, so this shouldn't be too much of an issue. And before too long, this battle is completely ours. The Professor does this weird, like, T-pose thing, and I take the Charmander and I decide to name it Butane. On my way out, I bump into this guy who's definitely not clearly the most evil-looking character in a video game ever, and I begin my long, long journey to the second gym. We start out at the Parfum Palace. I get a couple encounters here, so I just wanted to pause on the team so you could kind of see what it looks like. A lot of these guys are going to be leaving pretty quickly. We watch some fireworks in the daytime, and before long, Chlorophyll evolves from a Chespin into a Quilladin. Ugh, it's like the ugliest Pokemon I've ever seen. Charmander also turns into its weird, awkward middle stage, which is a Charmeleon. And before long, our Abra that we just barely caught evolves into a Kadabra. I promptly decide to leave it at the daycare. I'm pretty sure I never go back and get it again because it's just not going to be that useful for us. I only have one encounter in Connecting Cave, which is an Axew, which is incredibly exciting until Vivillon kills it. Great. But then I kid you not, on the next route, the first Pokemon I find is a Bagon. What are the odds of that actually happening? I named Bagon Carboneel, which in retrospect is a kind of a terrible name for it, and halfway through the route, Tetrotoxin goes down to a Drifloon. Great. I make it to Ambret Town and then go to Glittering Cave. Here I catch a Lunatone. I don't use a lot of single stage evolution, so I'm kind of excited to see how this goes. I don't get any encounters on the route leading up to Glittering Cave, so I'm just kind of excited to have any Pokemon at this point. I decided to nickname the Lunatone Lactone because that's all I can really think of. Before you know it, we have to move the plot forward by battling this Team Flare Grunt. There's really nothing exciting about this. Keratin basically mops the floor with his Houndour, knocks that thing down. Houndour? I don't know. And then in 2 hits, the Zubat goes down. We take a little bit of damage due to wing attack, but ultimately we mop the floor with the guy. Before going to the Silage City Gym, I go to the route north of there to try and catch a Hawlucha, but as you can see, I find Snubble instead. I name him Phenol and start training my Pokemon up for the second gym. Here's the team as it currently stands. I'm obviously going to level them up a little bit before taking on the gym leader, but since that's the only footage I have at the moment, it's going to have to do. Now, the Silage City Gym is one of the absolute most beautiful gyms ever. It's super fun to traverse. I just love this place. But Grant is incredibly terrifying to me. On top of the fact that his 2 Pokemon are at level 25, you have the Amora with Refrigerate, meaning it's going to hit like a tank with Takedown. It also has Thunder Wave, which is kind of annoying to deal with. Unfortunately, it's going to paralyze anything that I try to throw out against it. And then the Tyrant, although it only has 3 moves, it has the Strong Jaw ability, which means its Bite is going to also hit really, really hard. I've only done 1 Nuzlocke prior to making this video, but this is the point at which I lost that Nuzlocke. And it's really, really a concern to me that my team's just not going to take it. Alright, that's probably enough B-roll footage stalling. We can't hold off any longer, so here we go. Let's take on Grant, the second gym leader. Grant is going to start out with Amora, and fortunately for me, I know it's going to spam Thunder Wave, so I've equipped Phenol with the Cherry Berry that I picked up on one of the earlier routes. My goal is to spam Charm, that way it thinks that Takedown is not a good option for it, and it's stuck with using only Aurora Beam, which I can handle a little bit better. I get 2 charms off before the Thunder Wave paralyzes me, which is a little bit unfortunate, but part of what we expected. It goes for Aurora Beam just like I thought, and I'm paralyzed, so I can't do anything. I try to go for Rock Smash at this point, but I'm still paralyzed and I can't do anything. At this point, I decide to switch into Keratin because I figure its water typing is going to help me out here. It goes for Aurora Beam because of course it does, and I go for Water Pulse, which doesn't even bring it down to half. Not great. It uses Thunder Wave again. Now I'm paralyzed, and I go for Water Pulse again, figuring if I bring it down low and it heals, so be it. I hit, and Amora goes down to the red, and just like expected, Grant uses a potion. Water Pulse happens again, breaking through paralysis, and I just keep spamming it, hoping that I can continue to break through and take this thing down. I get another Water Pulse off, bringing it down into the red, and at this point, I'm worried I'm going to lose Keratin, so I switch in for Lactone. Lactone comes in and tanks an Aurora Beam like a champ because it's got pretty good special defense. I go for Confusion, and the Amora goes down. Tyrant is going to come out next, and he's got the Strong Jaw boosted Bite, which is definitely an issue for Lactone, so I decide to switch into Chlorophyll, who I know is pretty defensively bulky. Fortunately, he gets a crit right off the bat, not the greatest. Chlorophyll goes for its next attack, Bite flinches me, and now I only have 20 health. Alright, things are starting to not look so hot. I have to figure something out. I decide to call in Phenol, hoping that he'll break through paralysis, and at the very least he'll get an Intimidate off. Bite knocks me down to 29, I decide to go for Charm, and Bite comes in again knocking me to 21. I hit with a Charm, bringing his attack lower, and at this point I decide to go in for Chlorophyll again, thinking that he'll be able to tank a Bite pretty easily, but he goes for Stomp, bringing me down to 13. I try to go for Leech Seed, and Bite flinches me again, bringing me to 4. Yikes, definitely not great. I decided to switch into Lactone here because I know the Bite has been weakened quite a bit by my Charms and Intimidates, and I go for Hypnosis, which I'm fortunate actually works. At this point, I know I can safely switch in, so I go for Phenol in hopes to actually take this thing out. Intimidate goes off again, and Tyrant stays asleep. So I decide to go for Rock Smash. He stays asleep, but I'm paralyzed. I go for Rock Smash again. He wakes up, hits me with a Bite, leaving me with 17. Not too bad. I go for another Rock Smash, and he goes for Bite, bringing me down to 13, and I get flinched. Here I go for another Bite, but he stomps me, and Phenol goes down. What a rough loss. They send out Keratin, hoping that its Water Pulse will take him out, but the Bite brings me down to just 5, and the Water Pulse just does not do enough. At this point, I call in Butane, hoping that it can handle one Bite or one Stomp. Even though I get crit, I survive on 24, and the Dragon Rage goes first, taking the Tyrant out and getting us our second badge. Definitely could have been worse, but still kind of rough. The next part of the game goes pretty smoothly. There's some stuff in Geosenge Town, particularly with Karina, but nothing really exciting happens there. I do catch a Ninurito on the next route, but he's not going to be with me for very long, so why even bother? In the Mirroring Cave, I do catch a Sableye as my encounter, which is kind of cool. I name him Carbon. He's going to do some heavy lifting for us later on. We do have the issue of running into Wobbuffets in this cave, which is just kind of annoying because they won't let us escape. But generally, we make it through in one piece without any issues. We get out of the Mirroring Cave and we enter Shallur City, and we're tasked with going to speak with the Mega Evolution Guru. Here I have to battle my rival Serena, and I think this is the first and biggest case through this entire run of me just being completely side-blinded by a battle. It does not go well at all. Her Meowstic comes out first, and Lactone is a pretty good counter with Rock Slide. We don't have anything that can hit it really for great damage, so we just have to kind of brute force our way through. That's not the issue. Her issue is this Absol. It's wicked fast, and it hits like a truck. And at this point, I'm not 100% sure who to bring out, so I call out Polyamide, and it goes for Quick Attack. It does decent damage, and the light screen set up by her Meowstic goes away, and I go for Stun Spore. This is at least going to slow it down a little bit, but it hits me, gets a crit, and Polyamide goes down immediately to 1 attack. Not good. Decide to call in Butane next because it's got a decent attack in Dragon Rage, which is going to basically do a set amount of damage each time. Absol stays paralyzed for 2 moves, which is incredibly lucky for me, and I get to take the Absol down. Revenge feels pretty sweet, at least for now. She calls in her Brexen, and at this point, I decide to start spamming Smokescreen in hopes of being able to call out a different Pokemon. The problem is she traps me in this Fire Spin, which just like Infestation back in Viola's gym, is going to cause an issue because not only is it doing chip damage, but it's going to prevent me from switching. Here you can see that I'm kind of mindlessly spamming Smokescreen, thinking that I'm going to be able to pull my Pokemon out, but as you can see, I'm stuck. I've just realized there's an issue and I still go for Smokescreen for some reason, and again, I'm still stuck. I decided to go for Dragon Rage, but she hits me down to 6. Dragon Rage does not even do half, and Butane goes down because I was dumb. Fortunately, I'm able to call in Keratin. He's going to be able to come in with the Water Pulse. Psybeam connects, but ultimately it's no match for my Water Pulse, and the Brexen goes down. Yeah, same Serena, I feel ya. Before the Shallur City gym, and because I just lost 2 Pokemon, I go to the next route, and my encounter is a Miltank, which I named Stearic Acid. Between the slow level up and the fighting gym next, he never really got a shot at being useful, but I wish he had, because he's a pretty cool Pokemon. You'll see him crop up from time to time as I try to make him useful, but it just never really worked. Anyways, here's a freeze frame of the team as it is. Our level cap here is 32. and we're getting pretty close with some of our Pokemon. I actually think Karina is going to be the easiest gym battle of the whole run, and a lot of that has to do with Sableye. So without any further ado, let's just get into it. Unfortunately for Karina, her Mindfu has no attacks that can actually hit my Sableye, which is why she switches it out immediately for Machoke. It's actually kind of funny that she did that. Machoke is still taken below half, and I switch into Lactone, who I know is going to be able to take the Rock Tomb pretty well like a champ. Even with the speed drop, I go for Confusion and Outspeed, and the Machoke goes bye-bye. Next, she brings out her Hawlucha, which again would be very scary for us, but Carbon cannot be hit by any of its attacks. It goes for Flying Press, which does nothing. I go for Aerial Ace, and I'm kind of shocked by the amount of damage it did, and Hawlucha goes down very, very easily. Lastly, she calls out her Mind Fu again, but again, she cannot touch us. So I decide to just take it out with 2 attacks, and the third badge is ours. If only all of them could be this easy. We have to do the whole Lucario battle thing, but that's not very exciting. Plus, I'm not going to take the Lucario with me, so here we go, moving on. At this point, Keratin evolves into a Golduck, which for some reason doesn't get the Psychic typing, and we eventually make it to Coumarine City, which is really exciting because at this point, we can talk to a gentleman on the dock, and he can give us a good rod. The good rod will help us go back and catch a Skrelp, which is something that I'm really excited about because I've always wanted to use a Dragalge, but I've never actually had the opportunity to do so. So I catch a Skrelp and I name him Nitrogen. I come back to Coumarine City and see the professor talking to the champion. Before I can battle the gym, I have to battle Serena again. This time I win pretty easily, with Golduck taking out her Meowstic, Lactone taking out her Absol, and then Keratin taking out her Brexin. I'm a little nervous for the grass gym. Normally we take it out pretty easily, but we just don't have the moves needed to hit grass types critically at this point. But Bagon evolves into a Shelgon, so at least we have that. Alright, so it's grass gym time, and Ramos starts with his Jumpluff, and I start with Carboneel, who I've taught Aerial Ace to. The Aerial Ace does more than half, but with Jumpluff's acrobatics, it takes me under half before I can take it out. Next, Ramos goes for his Go-Go, which is a pretty tough opponent, especially if you can't hit it effectively. He takes me down to 17. Aerial Ace does not even do half, so unfortunately I have to switch. Fortunately, he just goes for Takedown, and Lactone comes in and gets incredibly lucky with Hypnosis, outspeeding and putting the Go-Go to sleep. At this point, I'm more concerned about him healing, so I decided to go for Embargo, preventing him from using any items. But it doesn't matter, because ultimately the Go-Go's going to stay asleep. I decided to go for Psychic here, because I've got pretty good special attack. I take him into the red, he stays asleep, and Go-Go goes bye-bye. His last Pokemon is Weepinbell, which because it's part poison is super weak to Psychic. He goes down to 1 Psychic, and with that, our Grass Gym badge is all ours. Also, as forgettable as Ramos is, man, the dude has a really impressive gym. On the next route, I catch a Dugtrio, because that's the only possible encounter here for me that I've never used, and I head over to the Kalos Power Plant in order to take on Team Flare. There's an NPC on the inside who clearly has no faith in us, which makes it all the more hilarious when we mop the floor with Team Flare. Dude, you are not going to get away with gaslighting me. My god. At this point, our starter evolves into his final form, Mr. Ugly Spiky Tank Man, and we finally get to the Lumio City Gym in order to restore the electricity. This game is just so incredibly beautiful, and I am here for every minute of it. It's now electric gym time, and I decided to pause the video here kind of mid-battle so you can see what our team looks like, since I don't think I've been super clear about it. Clement has a level 37 level cap, which many of our Pokemon are at. Let's take a look at how it went. So I start out with Lunatone, thinking I'm going to get off a Rock Slide, but we all know that Emolga is just going to Volt Switch on out of there, so I don't know what I was really going for with that plan. Magneton comes in next and gets hit with the Rock Slide, and it does basically as much as you'd expect, and I get a little health recovery with my leftovers. At this point, I decided that's just not going to work, so I swap in Chlorophyll, and Chlorophyll here is really, really nice because he's got Bulldoze, And if there's any hope in beating this run, it's going to be through the use of TM swapping like this, and just praying that I get coverage. Bulldoze goes off, and the Magneton gets totally destroyed, because of course it does. It's quad weak. The problem is, now Electric Terrain is set up, and the Emolga's back out, and it knows Aerial Ace. So I decide that I need to switch. I go with Doug Trio, or Nitrate if you prefer, because I know it's got great coverage. Hits me for Aerial Ace, taking over half damage, but I know Rock Tomb is going to do massive. Oh, it missed. Oh. Great. I switch into Lunatome because I figure Emolga's probably just going to use Volt Switch anyway. I go for Psychic, the Volt Switch hits, taking me below half with a crit, and Heliolisk comes out. Psychic hits, but it doesn't do nearly as much as I had hoped, maybe doing about a third. And fortunately for us, the electricity disappears from the battlefield. That's going to help us out. Lactone switches, and I bring out Chlorophyll instead. I'm pretty confident he's going to go for Grass Knot, which he does. It does basically nothing. At this point, I'm going to go for Bulldoze. Hopefully it does massive damage. It hits me with Thunderbolt. It doesn't do very much. I hit Bulldoze and the Heliolisk goes down. 2 down, 1 to go. Unfortunately, his last Pokemon is that Emolga, which again knows Aerial Ace, so I have to switch in. I decided to go with Carboneel here, figuring it's probably pretty tanky. Aerial Ace doesn't do very much. I decided to go for Leer, just in the off chance that I have to switch. This is hopefully going to soften it up a little bit in case I need to send somebody else out. I go for Leer a second time. It goes for Volt Switch, taking me down to 23 with a crit. Leer does more of a defense drop, and at this point I can't keep Carboneel out again because I know it's going to get outsped. Here I go for Lactone as it goes for Aerial Ace. It brings me down just a tiny little bit, and leftovers heal me up. Lactone at this point should be pretty speedy and should be able to hit a Rock Slide. I get taken down into the red. Fortunately, the Rock Slide does connect and the Emolga goes down. Phew! Fortunately, no major losses. Doug Trio, not the end of the world. After earning the badge, I go to this place, which is definitely not an evil layer, and I go on to the next route where I can catch my next encounter, which is going to be a Shelmet. Just great, another Pokemon I will probably never use. I also have to battle Serena again, and her first Pokemon goes down really nice and easy. Her second Pokemon, the Absol, also goes down pretty nice and easy, but I run into an issue with her Delphox in kind of a big and sad way. It goes for Psybeam, and Keratin faints. So now, on top of having no flyer, I have no water type. Just peachy. Thankfully, Lunatone's there to pick up the slack, and the Delphox goes down, leading me to a win. Seriously though, big yikes on these Serena battles. The big yikes is going to continue into our 6th gym here. We've been really fortunate that we haven't had any major losses in the last few gyms, but unfortunately that's going to stop here. Just a little bit of, foreshadowing. I decided to try to start with Nitrogen here, hoping that with the poison typing and my ability to do double team, that leftovers and double team together, coupled with the fact that Mawile can't really do any major damage, is going to allow me to set up really nicely. Unfortunately, even though Mawile doesn't hit consistently, when it does hit, I'm taking pretty massive damage. So at some point, I just can't keep spamming double team anymore, and I decide to go for Surf. The issue is Mawile is bulking up defensively quite a bit, and at some point I get knocked into the red, and that's just flat out not going to work. Here I know she's going to heal, so I take the opportunity to switch into Chlorophyll, and I know that it can't hit me with super effective damage either, so I decide to just spam Hone Claws as the Leech Life drains it down. You can see that as I'm spamming Hone Claws that it's hitting me, but the Leech Seed is basically reinvigorating me with every single attack. Eventually I decided to just go for Seed Bomb. It does over half despite all of its defense boosts, so I feel like I'm in pretty good shape here to use another Seed Bomb and take it out. 1 Pokemon down. No biggie. Next she calls out Mr. Mime, who outspeeds and goes with Reflect. At this point, that probably should have been a red flag that chlorophyll's pretty slow, but I hit it with poison jab and he falls pretty quickly. She brings out her Sylveon and I just go for poison jab, but she hits dazzling gleam, which is super effective, and chlorophyll completely gets wiped off the face of the earth. And you can see here as I'm trying to click through my Pokemon that I don't have a plan for this. I don't know what to do. I decide to call in Stearic Acid, who is 12 levels lower, in hopes of getting off Toxic, which I do, because oddly enough, 12 levels lower, I outspeed. Interestingly enough, she goes for Charm just to lower my attack, and I decide to go with Body Slam in hopes of flinching. The Body Slam hits, but it basically does nothing. Dazzling Gleam wipes me to the red, and I decide I have to switch into Lunatone. She goes for Dazzling Gleam again, which doesn't do half. I'm pretty tanky, and I'm just hoping Toxic is going to do what it needs to do. For some reason, I'm panicking at this point and go for Hypnosis. It doesn't do anything because she's already poisoned. I decide to go for Psychic. She's under half, and I take her down to the red before she goes for Charm. Fortunately, the Toxic takes it out, getting me my 6th gym badge. It's really bittersweet because even though this chunky boy was really ugly, he was still my starter and he had good attack, so I'm going to miss him. Rest in peace, little buddy. After we beat Valerie, we can go to the Pokeball Factory where we beat Team Flare. Again, nothing too exciting going on here. And then on the next several routes, I'm able to catch a Lombre, which I named Ligand. Super excited because I've never gotten to use a Ludicolo before. We'll see how he does. It'll be nice to have his special attack and bulk on the team. In the Lost Hotel, which I count as a separate area, I catch a Magneton, which I name Iron Oxide. Rusty Boy here is going to evolve into a Magnezone. I just have to take him to the Power Plant area and level him up. So there's our Magnezone. And I also catch a Watchog, which I don't use, but I'm intrigued by him a little bit. I've never played Black and White 2, so maybe in a future run I'll do that, and we'll get a chance to use him. In the meantime, I name him Retinol, and I throw him in the box. Up next is Dendemil Town, which is one of my favorites in this game. It's just, I don't know, really pretty to me. I have to go to Frost Cavern and beat Team Flare again. I get a Bergmite encounter in here, but I accidentally kill it, so there's really not much to talk about here other than, again, some sad grunty boys. On the next route, I found my next encounter, which is a Delibird, and Nuzlocke or not, I'm not using this, so bye-bye. Sorry, friend. Next up is Anastar City, and the gym here makes me very nervous because Olympia's Meowstic is super duper 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 fast. Before heading in, though, I make sure to stop at the Pokemon Center to see what kind of TM this random person gives me. And then I head over to what has to be my least favorite gym. This just isn't how physics works, right? While in there, Skrelp evolves into Dragalge, or should I say Nitrogen evolves into Dragalge, which is super exciting. And Lunatone passes the level cap, so I have to bring Retinol with me. You can see the team I'm going to use here. Not sure if this is going to work, but hey, we got to try. Olympia is going to start off with her Sigilyph. The Sigilif's main job is to put up a light screen, which is going to raise its team's special defense. Kind of annoying, especially since my Thunderbolt probably would have done a little bit more without that there. We tank a Psychic, but because we don't bring it down too far, we can take out Sigilyph in a second hit. Next up is Meowstic, who's just going to hit me with Fake Out on the first turn, so it doesn't really matter what I pick. It's going to continue to outspeed me here, and it's also going to go for Calm Mind, which can get really dangerous, because if it boosts its special attack too much, it's going to be able to sweep basically my entire team. So I just start spamming Metal Sound in hopes of lowering its special defense. During this process, the light screen also wears off, so this is as good of time as any, I figure, to just hit it and see what I can do. It goes for Calm Mind again, which raises again its special attack and special defense, but it's no match for my Thunderbolt, and it goes down. Lastly is Slowking. Slowking avoids the Metal Sound and goes for Yawn, making me drowsy. As a result, I decide to call in Ligand. Even though he doesn't have a special grass move at this point, he has Grass Knot, and Slowking's pretty beefy. I tank the Psychic attack because I'm also pretty specially defensive. Even though he goes for Yawn, 2 Grass Knots are going to take this guy out pretty fast, which is great. Nice smooth gym battle for the first time in a while, and the 7th gym badge is mine. After this gym, we end up having to deal with all the Team Flare and the end of the world stuff. Something you may not realize unless you've actually played this game in the Nuzlocke way is that you actually have to battle Lysander 3 times, basically back to back to back. It's actually kind of weird. I don't think that that happens in any other Pokemon game. The biggest threat that he has is his Gyarados because it's just a coverage machine. Anything we have that we can use against it just gets squashed by his coverage moves. The other problem is in the last battle, he's going to actually be able to Mega Evolve his Gyarados, so we better be really, really prepared in order to deal with this. I start out with Nitrogen here with the leftovers, and I just start spamming Double Team. The good news is Mindfu is going to keep using High Jump Kick as his primary attack here. And that ends up being a real problem for him because anybody who's used High Jump Kick knows that if you miss, you crash and keep going. So I don't even need to land an attack, I just need to wait for the Mindfu to end up crashing itself until it faints, which is exactly what it does. Next up is Gyarados, who does get off the Intimidate, but his Outrage ultimately misses, and I have really, really, really strong Thunderbolt, which is 4 times effective here. He does get 1 Outrage off, which brings me down into the red, but ultimately he's no match for the Thunderbolt, and he goes down. Now the problem is, even with leftovers here, I know it's not safe to leave in Nitrogen at this point, so I switch him out for Iron Oxide. Murkrow is not going to be able to do much, but he does have the ability Super Luck, which means he's going to get more frequent critical hits, as you can see here with this Foul Play that hits like a bus. Fortunately, he's no match for Thunderbolt, and the Murkrow does go down. Pyroar comes out last. Iron Oxide is just not going to cut it. Even though I do have a water type with Ligand, I try Lunatone first. However, ultimately he does get a critical hit and a burn, so I decide just to try Ligand anyway. I don't think he's going to go for a fire type move against a rock type, so I think I'm pretty safe with the switch, and he doesn't. I go for Surf. He goes for Fire Blast, which does way more than I'd like, but we ultimately take him down. Battle 1 out of 3, done and dusted. During the siege on the base, Carboneel evolves into Salamence, and you have absolutely no idea how annoying it's been trying to use Fly with a Chatot this whole time, so I'm very, very excited to have this evolution finally complete. This is also where we get that pretty cinematic Gen 6 story component, which I really like. We see all the houses here in Geosenge Town get toppled like a bunch of Lego bricks. And oh look, it's time to battle this wackadoo again. I think my favorite part of this scene is just how shocked Serena looks that this clearly evil looking dude is actually evil. Like, come on, you had to see this coming. Because we have a third Lysander fight ahead, let's just go through this quickly. Carboneel knocks out Mineshaw with Fly, and Lysander calls out the dreaded Gyarados. He gets off an Intimidate, and so I decide to stay in. Outrage does a lot and brings me down to only 17 HP, so I call out Iron Oxide. Because he's trapped in Outrage, he hits me and does almost nothing, so I go for Thunderbolt, and the Thunderbolt takes the Gyarados down. That's 2. Next, he calls out Pyroar. I decide to go for Ligand again. He goes for Fire Blast, which again does a lot of damage. Even with the crit, I survive on 2, and the Pyroar goes down. Very, very close call. Lastly, we have Honchkrow. Clearly, I can't leave out Ligand with only 2 HP left, so I go for Higher Oxide. It goes for Night Slash, takes me below half, but it's not going to be able to do much because I've got Thunderbolt. And with that, our second Lysander fight is done. The legendary Pokemon Yveltal wakes up from its egg thing, starts to go on a rampage. Obviously, based on our Nuzlocke rules, I'm not going to catch it. It's a legendary. I think that's cheating. But while the animation runs, let's talk just briefly about the final Lysander fight. We still have Mineshaw, Honchkrow, and Pyroar. And like I said before, the Gyarados is going to be able to Mega Evolve. It's got Aqua Tail, Iron Head, Earthquake, and Outrage. Lots and lots of coverage. and lots of potential for this to go sideways. Our first matchup is Mineshow versus Lactone. Feel pretty safe here knowing that the Gyarados is going to come out at the end due to the Mega Evolution. I decided to go with Psychic. The Mineshow fortunately only goes for Swords Dance, doesn't really do much to me because it's not going to make it past the one Psychic. One attack and one Pokemon down. Next up is going to be Pyroar, and at first I think about leaving Lactone in, but we all know what's going to happen. I'm going to end up calling in Ligand because I like to live dangerously and on the edge. Ligand comes out against Pyroar, who's going to go for Dark Pulse here. Dark Pulse doesn't do too much because Ligand again is so specially tanky. It does get the crit though. I decided to go for Surf. Pyroar does Fire Blast like he always does, and just like always, I'm left with the tiniest tiny sliver. Thank God he didn't get a crit. Surf comes in and takes the Pyroar out. I guess I like to live on the edge here. Next he's going to call out Honchkrow because of course he does. Ligand obviously can't stay out for a number of reasons, so I decided to go for Carbon here. This is where the battle gets a little bit shaky. I bring out Carboneel to sack the aerial ace, and I go for Dazzling Gleam because I know it's going to be super effective, but Honchkrow hits us with Night Slash, which does a critical hit and takes Carbon out. This little guy did so much work for us, I'm just really, I am at a loss for words. Fortunately, Iron Oxide comes out, gets a clean switch, and I get to go for Thunderbolt. Not only do I hit the Honchkrow for Thunderbolt, but it crits, which is a beautiful, beautiful piece of revenge against the bird that just took out my good friend. Of course, Lysander now calls out his final Pokemon, which is his Gyarados, which is going to Mega Evolve here. It hits us with the Intimidate, and I decide to switch into Carboneel to get my own Intimidate off. I know he's going to Mega Evolve him here. In addition to just being a beast, it also changes its type from water flying to water and dark, which means our electric type attacks aren't going to do as much damage. It Mega Evolves, turning into this giant shrimpy looking thing. And I decide, you know what, I think it's too dangerous to risk Carboneel, so I decide to go for Iron Oxide, hoping that the Gyarados is still going to go for Outrage here, thinking that my own Carboneel is out. Sure enough, he does go for Outrage. We're going to see how much damage that does here, and ultimately, it's basically nothing. Perfect. I decided to go for Metal Sound instead of just for Thunderbolt, hoping that's going to soften him up a little bit, just in case things go sideways. Again, Outrage does almost nothing, but then he stops and gets confused. Happens a little bit earlier than I would have liked, but it is what it is. At this point, I can't risk it anymore, so I decide to go for a Thunderbolt. Fortunately for us, it hits himself in its confusion, which is a really big benefit to us. I go for Thunderbolt, and the Gyarados goes down. Third Lysander battle done. Thank God. The world is once again safe. We topple some houses, the weapon goes kablooey, and now we gotta wrap this run up. I do have a couple more encounters, but on the next route, I catch what will ultimately be my final team member for the Elite Four in a Durant. Again, a single stage evolution, but Bug and Steel together are going to have some pretty nice resistances, and he's going to hopefully come in handy here, especially at the Ice type gym. I name him Silver Nitrate because why not? And let's take a look at Wolfric. Wolfric only has 3 Pokemon, and he always starts with Abomasnow. So I decided to start out with Silver Nitrate, because Bug and Steel type is going to be this guy's worst nightmare. Go for a Hone Claws, hoping to set up to sweep his entire team, but Abomasnow uses Ice Beam and freezes us. Even though I have leftovers on, which takes care of the chip damage from the hail, I get frozen still on the second turn, and Abomasnow hits me again with an Ice Beam, bringing me down. Once everything kind of settles out, I end up with 48 HP, and I decide this is just not prudent. So I switch in for Iron Oxide. Abomasnow is pretty tanky, and I was a bit concerned that I won't be able to take it out right away, so I decided to go for Metal Sound. That lowers his special defense, and he can't really touch me either, but the hail is starting to do some damage. So finally I decided to just go for Flash Cannon, and he goes down pretty much instantly. Next, Wolfric sends out Avalugg. I go for Metal Sound, but he avoids it. He decides to bulk up his attack and his defense, so at this point I decide to just go for it. No time like the present, And he also goes down like a sack of taters. Last up is Cryogonal. Cryogonal has the best special defense out of most of this team, at least better than Avalugg. But I decided to just go for it anyway, and I do pretty good damage. I assume he's going to heal here, but instead he just goes for Confuse Ray, and I don't really understand why. But I break through, hit him with the flash cannon, and that's my 8th and final badge. As you can tell, as this video has gotten longer, I've decided to start skipping a lot of the side notes, items I've been picking up, TMs I've been getting, and a lot of these side battles, just because, again, I don't want this video to be 3 hours long. I don't know how a lot of these YouTubers do it. I'm watching a hardcore Nuzlocke of rock types right now, and it's such a good video. I don't know how he squeezes it all in 42 minutes. Regardless, at this point, just to recap some of the game, I've lost 9 Pokemon, including my initial starter Chestnut, Sableye, Golduck, Ductrio, Nidoking, Charmeleon, Vivillon, Granbull, and Venipede. My team is pretty much set, and as you'll see here, we beat Serena, although not without some close calls. I'm going to go into the Elite Four with the level cap planned of 65 because those are the level caps of each of their aces. All 4 of them have a final Pokemon of level 65. And if I make it to the champion, her ace, Gardevoir, is going to have a Mega Evolution and it's going to be at level 68. I think the Mega part of the Gardevoir is going to be the issue, but we do have 2 Steel types on our team and a poison type, even if that poison type is part dragon. So if I make it to the champion, I do think I'll be able to beat her. It's just a matter of will I actually make it through all 4 Elite Four members. Our team is okay. It's actually pretty decent, but it doesn't mesh well with the Elite Four, or at least as well as I would like. So we'll see how that goes. As you can see in this battle, we're getting chipped down quite a bit by Serena. My levels could use a little bit more work. And we'll do that before we get to the Elite Four. As you can see here, we're down to our final Pokemon, and we're pretty rough for wear. I decided, I think ultimately, Ligand, keeping him in is the best move. Fortunately, he tanks a Dragon Pulse, hits with the quad effective Ice Beam, and this battle is good to go on to the Elite Four. I decided to go with Malva first, then Drasna, then Wickstrom, and I decided to go with Seabold last. Seabold, I don't really have a good answer for him, especially his Gyarados, which is really scary for my entire team, so I figured maybe some extra levels through the Elite Four will help me out. I start out with Lactone against her Pyroar because it can't really do a lot of damage just because of my typing. The plan is to put it asleep and then use Calm Mind to sort of boost myself for the rest of the battle. However, as you can see, that doesn't work super well because it takes forever for me to get it asleep in the first place. And every time I use Calm Mind, it lowers my stats with its own attack. Also, once it's asleep, it doesn't stay asleep for nearly as long as I had hoped. So I don't get nearly as many Calm Minds off as I'd like. It's not the most exciting battle. So after going back and forth and being brought just below half, I decided to just go for Psychic and see what it does, and the Pyroar goes down like a sack of potatoes. Next comes out Torkoal, and I decided to go for a Calm Mind right at the beginning, thinking it's not going to be able to do much damage to me either. But when it goes for its first attack, I see, woo, that's actually quite a bit more damage than I had expected. So I decided to go for Psychic, see what it does, and the Torkoal also goes down pretty easily. Next, she sends out Chandelure. At this point, I'm getting a little nervous, so I decide to switch out Lactone for Nitrogen, thinking maybe my special attack here will be enough to keep me afloat. It does pretty decent damage, and I go for Double Team, thinking maybe I can spam the attack, but I get brought down to just 51 health, and I don't want to lose a Pokemon just yet, so I decide to swap again, this time into Ligand, which, although it's water type, is also grass type, meaning this could be potentially a little dicey. Fortunately, it goes for Shadow Ball again. Ligand's pretty tanky in the special defense category, but then it goes for Flamethrower, bringing me down to a sliver before the Surf takes it down. Very, very, very close. Lastly, out comes Talonflame, and obviously I can't keep Ligand out here, so I decided to go for Carboneel, thinking that the typing of both Dragon and Flying plus the Intimidate is going to help keep me safe. Goes for quick attack because obviously it thinks Ligand is still going to be out. And I decide to go for fly here because I think that's my best damage doing move. Before I can get an attack, it hits me with Brave Bird, doesn't do very much. And then it misses its second Brave Bird as I go for fly. Here's where the problem happens. I get burned with a sliver left for Talonflame. She heals, and I go for Dragon Claw, which does not do enough. This brings me down below half. At this point, I decide to go for Fly, and it goes for Brave Bird again. And at this point, I can see my major problem. I've only got 42 health left, and I'm up in the air. So I come down, and Burn takes Carbonil down. Oh my god. The good news is I know she has another full restore, so if I call out Iron Oxide here for Thunderbolt, she's going to heal, which is going to give me an opportunity to attack. Iron Oxide goes for Thunderbolt, and I get Sweet, Sweet Revenge, and the Talonflame goes down. One Elite Four member down, but not without a pretty substantial loss in the form of Carbonil. Rest in peace, buddy. Next up is Drasna, and I start out with Silver Nitrate against her Dragalge because I know the poison typing here is going to make it substantially weak to my Dig. It goes for Surf, I hit it with Dig, and the Dragalge goes down pretty easily, pretty straightforward. Next, she calls out her Noivern, that's just not going to fly, so I call out Ligand because I know it's got Ice Beam. Now, her Noivern starts by going with Flamethrower, that does not a lot of damage. I go for Ice Beam, but I get outsped, and he hits me with Air Slash down to 32. Hit it with Ice Beam, and of course it goes down. Next, she decides to call out Altaria, which I think is kind of an interesting choice because it's also quad weak to Ice Beam. So I hit it, and Altaria goes down. Thank God I outspeed there, otherwise we probably would have had a big problem on our hands. Lastly, she calls out Druddigan. Druddigan is able to knock my Pokemon back out into my party with its Dragon Tail attack. So that's going to be the thing that's most annoying here. I go for Iron Oxide, it goes for the Dragon Tail, does very little damage, but in response it calls out Lactone. I decide to go for Hypnosis here, thinking that that might give us an opportunity to do a more safe switch-in, and it actually hits first time, no problem. At this point, I'm kind of stuck. I haven't decided exactly who I want to call in. I kind of debate between Iron Oxide, but ultimately go for Nitrogen, thinking that its special attack might be just what we need here. So Nitrogen comes out, Druddigan is still fast asleep, so I go with Dragon Pulse, hoping that it's going to take this thing out in a one-shot, but it doesn't. It knocks it into the yellow. It goes for its own attack, not doing very much damage here, so I go for Dragon Pulse again as Drasna uses her full restore. This is a great opportunity for me to hit it again down to the yellow, and with one final hit here, Dragon Pulse completely knocks out our Druddigan, and with that, our second Elite Four member is beaten. This time we didn't lose anybody along the way. Awesome. Alright, the third Elite Four member is Wickstrom with his Steel type, and I think this is a really good battle to illustrate how I really didn't fully investigate things as well as I should have. I start with Silver Nitrate, and I know that Klefki ultimately doesn't have a lot of damaging moves that it can use to really do anything to me. So with Silver Nitrate, I just start setting up Hone Claws. It's not the most exciting battle to watch, because Klefki can't really do very much to me, and Leftovers is doing a good job of healing. All he can really do is keep hitting me with Flash Cannon from time to time, and scattering spikes. Now, the hope here is that with enough Hone Claws, I can just use Silver Nitrate to sweep his team with Dig. The problem with this is it's going to work really well here with Klefki in a second. You're going to see he gets taken out really easily. The issue is that Probopass has Sturdy, and so when I go for Dig here, Probopass is going to survive. It's going to survive with a tiny amount of HP. And while I'm pretty confident that Silver Nitrate's going to be able to withstand one attack, it doesn't. It goes down to Power Gem, leaving me to send out Ligand here. Ligand gets hit by the spikes, but it can use super effective Focus Blast, which I've taught it. Now Wickstrom here heals, and I go for Focus Blast, but that resets the Sturdy again. So this time I go for Surf, knowing that Wickstrom is going to heal another time. This brings Probopass down to the yellow, and I can outspeed and finally take the bugger out. Not great losing another Pokemon. Scissor comes out next, and he knows a variety of different attacks that aren't going to be really great for Ligand, so I switch into Iron Oxide here. I don't really have a lot that I can use, but I know that Scissor can't really do very much to me. I decide to go for Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt hits for over half. I get hit below half as well, and then I hit it with another Thunderbolt and it goes down. Alright, 3 out of 4 done. Lastly, he's going to send out Aegislash, and Aegislash is going to be a little bit of a problem for me. It's going to be able to hit pretty hard like a tank once it changes stance here. I call Nitrogen out, hoping that I can do some pretty effective damage here. The first attack doesn't do a lot, so I decide to go for Dragon Pulse just to see kind of how much it's going to do, but I get hit hard and then flinched. I can't leave Nitrogen in, I have to switch, so I go into Ligand, who gets hit with the spikes on its return, and then Aegislash hits me down to 62 health. Here I pause for a while, trying to decide what move I can use, because I know if I get hit one more time, I'm going to lose Ligand, and it's going to be a big problem. I decide to go for Surf, knowing it's going to get Stab, and Aegislash goes down. We lose one more Pokemon, and we're off to fight the 4th Elite 4-member Seabold. Like I said at the beginning of this part of the video, the issue with Seabold is his Gyarados. The rest of his team doesn't really scare me. However, his Gyarados has Dragon Dance, Ice Fang, Waterfall, and Earthquake, so I know this is going to cause me some major problems down the road. I start with Ligand and he goes for his Clawitzer, so I hit it pretty hard with Energy Ball, but it survives on what must be like 2 HP. I get hit, but I know he's going to heal, so I go for an Energy Ball again. The Energy Ball takes him out this time, which means it was just a range the first time. Next, for some reason, he calls in his Barbarical, which is 4 times weak to grass, and I take him down as well. 2 down, easy. The problem with Starmie is that it's tankier and it outspeeds, so he goes for a Light Screen, which raises its special defense. It means Energy Ball does slightly over a half, and at this point, I think Iron Oxide might be the better play. That way I have it out when the Gyarados comes out. He goes for a Psychic, which does basically nothing, and for some reason I decide to go for Toxic here. I'm not 100% sure why I did that, but after a single Surf, I'm already at less than half. Not great. I decide at this point it's best to just get rid of the thing, so I go for Thunderbolt, living only on a tiny bit of HP for when Gyarados comes out. And I get hit with the Intimidate. At this point, I have no other choice, so I try to go for Thunderbolt, but I get outsped and Iron Oxide goes down. At this point, you can see I'm kind of panicking. I don't really know who to call out. I'm kind of looking at the moves, trying to figure out what my best play is. I decide to call in Ligand, even though I don't think he's going to be able to do enough damage. I get hit with Ice Fang, freeze, immediately get thawed out, and I go for Energy Ball. Doesn't even do close to enough damage, and he decides to Dragon Dance. Bad. Really bad. I hit him for Ice Beam, taking him under half, but then I get hit with Ice Fang and Ligand goes down. I'm down to 2 Pokemon. He is Dragon Danced. This is not going to end well. I decide to try Lactone next. I try to go for a Rock Slide. It goes for Waterfall. Lactone goes down. And as you can imagine, we're pretty much screwed at this point. Nitrogen's all we have left. I try to go for Dragon Pulse here. He goes for Earthquake. And I live on 14 HP, but I don't get the KO. He heals because he has a second healing item. I go for Dragon Pulse. It's not going to do enough. On this next turn, Gyarados ends our run and we lose. Now you'll notice that there's a little bit of video here left, and that's because I'm a glutton for punishment. And I wanted to see if there was any other strategy I could have used to handle this better. And truthfully, it took me 4 more battles with Seabold to actually get to the point of where I could win. And you'll notice in this one, I didn't lose any of my Pokemon along the way, which is also kind of helpful. At this point, Ligand is also above the level cap for the champion, and since I already broke the rules and I've already lost, I didn't really think it was a big deal. So I beat the Clawitzer this time without having to take any damage, and I also beat the Barbarical. Now when Starmie comes out, it still outspeeds and goes for Light Screen, but this time I'm trying to outstall it. I can do this by tricking the AI and calling in Lactone here. When Starmie heals with the full restore, it's going to go for Surf because that's what super effective damage would be. So I decide to call in Nitrogen, who can tank that Surf. After nitrogen is out, the Starmie is going to go for psychic instead because that would be super effective against nitrogen. So here I switch into ligand to take the psychic. Again, all waiting for that light screen to go down. Starmie's first psychic gets a crit, but I have health to spare, and the second one brings me down to 54 health, for Energy Ball brings it into the dark red. Here the light screen does wear off, and he heals, so I know I've got a pretty good shot, and Energy Ball takes the Starmie down. More importantly, there's no shield up for Gyarados. Now, here I go for Energy Ball, hoping it'll do damage, but I only get about half. But I get a special defense drop before he goes for Dragon Dance. Now here I'm trying to decide what my next move is. I don't really have a good plan. Figure I can play the AI kind of like I did with Starmie and call in Silver Nitrate here. Because the Gyarados thinks Ligand is going to be out, he goes for Ice Fang. It does almost nothing. Leftovers heals me a little bit, and for some reason here I decide to go into Lactone. I'm not sure what I thought was going to happen, but Gyarados goes for Waterfall and Lactone goes down. Not great, but also not the end of the world. I decide to switch here into Carboneel, and it gets off and Intimidate. And this is where I decide that I can start to use the AI against itself. I call in Silver Nitrate, it goes for Ice Fang thinking Carboneel is going to be out, leftovers, heals. Here, I know it's going to go for Waterfall, so I decide to go for Carboneel again. When I switch in the Carboneel, I know he's going to get hit with Intimidate. And the Waterfall does almost nothing to Carboneel. So I know that if I keep switching back and forth, he's going to be able to do very, very minimal damage to me using both Ice Fang and Waterfall timed out correctly. And every time I get Carboneel in, I get an Intimidate off, meaning his attack is going to get lower and lower. I finally found the perfect strategy. So I decide to repeat this. Waterfall goes off, Carboneel comes out, I decide to switch, Silver Nitrate goes in, he goes for Ice Fang because that would be quad effective, it does nothing to Silver Nitrate, and then I repeat this over and over. As you can see, the AI falls for it over and over and over again, and every time I bring his attack a little bit lower. Plan is that after enough repetitions, I should be able to pull out a Pokemon that can actually do some damage, and the Gyarados won't be able to hit me and take me out. So after several repetitions of this, I finally decide to call in Iron Oxide. Now, Iron Oxide can hit with quad effective attacks like Thunderbolt, and when he comes in, Waterfall does pretty much nothing. At this point, I know Gyarados is still going to outspeed and go for Earthquake. I go for Thunderbolt, but the Earthquake, despite doing quite a bit of damage, does not knock me down, and the Thunderbolt gets me the win. Finally, Seabold goes down. Like I said before, I'm curious to see how the champion fight's going to go, so at this point, I figure I'm just going to heal my team. And truthfully, I don't think she's going to be a huge challenge. And since I already have a Pokemon that breaks the level boundary, I've already lost the run. I also decide to just heal Lactone anyway. I don't think he's going to be a major player here, but I just figure since I'm breaking all the rules anyway, you might as well just go for it. The battle starts out with Lactone versus her Hawlucha. Hawlucha decides to go with X-Scissor, which is super effective, but ultimately doesn't do a lot. I go for Psychic, the Hawlucha goes down. Next, she calls in her Tyrantrum, and I decide to switch into Ligand here because I know I have Ice Beam. He goes for Crunch because that would have been super effective on Lactone and does almost half, but Ice Beam just completely takes it down. Next, she calls out Goodra for some reason, and I decide to go for Ice Beam, but Goodra is just completely unfazed by it because she's a tanky bugger. I get hit down to 56 and I decide to go for another Ice Beam, which brings it down to in the red zone, but a Dragon Pulse hits me and I get brought down to 1 HP. Definitely a time to switch here. I decide to go for Carboneel because I know Goodra is going to have to heal in this turn, so I'm going to get the free swap in. I also know that Carboneel is going to be able to outspeed, so I decide to go for Dragon Claw, and the Goodra goes down. Not as physically tanky as it is specially tanky. Next comes out the Aurorus, which is a nightmare for Carboneel, so I switch into Silver Nitrate, who tanks the Blizzard. After getting hit with the Blizzard, my leftovers heal me a little bit, and I decide to go for Dig. Now, I'm not 100% sure at this point why I decided to go for Dig, but he's able to set up a Reflect, which is going to boost its defense. Again, we've seen this before, it's not the greatest. Dig doesn't do a lot, but its Thunder misses, thank God, and I decided to go for Iron Head, which is probably what I should have just done in the first place, and the Aurorus goes down. Next is Gourgeist, and I go for X Scissor, but whether it's just weak attacking or the Reflect, it does nothing, and he goes for Trick or Treat, which means he's going to go for a Ghost type attack, and I got to switch. I call out Carboneel because it's got Fly, and sure enough, Gourgeist goes for Phantom Force and disappears on me. Good news for me here is I can go for Fly, and this is going to time out really nicely. I avoid the Phantom Force, I go for Fly, and the Gourgeist goes down. Last, she calls in her ace, Guardy here. We have mirrored Intimidates go off, which doesn't really do much, and I decide to go in for Iron Oxide. I know she's going to Mega here, and that's going to cause me some trouble, but I also know that the Steel typing is going to be real strong here. Guardy goes for Moonblast, and I decide for some reason to poison him. I think it's just a safer play, but I get brought down pretty hardcore by the Shadow Ball. At this point, I kind of debate switching something in, but it's going to just hammer me away, so I decide to leave Iron Oxide out in hopes of a fresh switch, and Iron Oxide goes down to the Shadow Ball. Just how it has to be, unfortunately. Silver Nitrate comes in with its Steel typing, and I go for Iron Head. Thunderbolt does massive damage, but I do more, and Guardy goes down, and with that, I've beaten the champion. Now, technically, I've lost this run, lost it in a few different ways, but it was still really satisfying to get to this point with this team of Pokemon that I've never used before. I'm also pretty convinced that nobody's going to watch a video this long, but I wanted to make something that I would enjoy watching. I wanted to make content that I like. So if you did happen to watch this, please consider hitting the like button. Let me know that you saw it and maybe appreciated it. Don't know if I'll make any more videos like this, but who knows in the future. Maybe I'll try some different Nuzlocks at some point. But I've proven to myself that I can make this kind of content, and that's all that I really wanted to do. So maybe see you next time, and if not, have a good one.